Greetings, everyone. Through here, welcome to the DemoHub. It's official. Snowflake now supports Python. But even more amazing is the experience that Snowflake provides for you to author your Python code directly from within the Snowflake Snowsight UI. In this demo, we're going to jump in, unpack how quickly it is to leverage that worksheet to author Python code. Let's jump into the demo and see what that all looks like. So the Snowflake Snowsight worksheet builds on the existing Snowflake experience. That's the beauty about it. To create a new worksheet, what we're going to do is very similar to what you do when creating an existing SQL worksheet. Go over to the top right side. There is the option to create a SQL worksheet, which is what most folks are used to. Now you have this new experience where you can create a Python worksheet. Go ahead and click on that. This creates a brand new Python worksheet. Right off the bat, we have some boilerplate code. The reason why this is so cool is one, there is syntax highlighting, there's autocomplete, there's IntelliSense, everything you love about traditional IDE experience when writing Python, you get that right at your fingertips. Plus, you're doing that within the Snowflake experience. You can see my data warehouse and my schema. A couple of things to call out is the handler. So this is how you get into your method. This is your entry point. In this case, we're going into the main method. My handler here will be main to match that. Here is the return type. Depending on what you're returning from your Python code, you're going to want to make sure the return type matches. In this case, we're returning a data frame. The return type will be a table. If we're returning a string, the return type will be a string. You can do a line wrapping as well as linting if you want to format your code. These are just the basic configurations you have from a settings perspective. Very simple, very intuitive. Because Snowflake has this integration with Anaconda right at your fingertips, you get all the thousands of packages that are available within Anaconda right here. Everything from async, let's do a regex as an example. If I needed this within my code, you can select that and that's available right within this particular context. If Anaconda doesn't have what you need, and there are cases where it just doesn't, and you want to bring in your own custom code, maybe this is code you develop over the years, over the decades. The machine learning team, the data science team has built amazing packages and modules and utilities. You want to bring all of that. Obviously, you're not going to put that into Anaconda. You're not even going to put that into PyPy. At the very least, you might have it in GitHub and you want to bring it in here. This is where the next option allows you to do that. I have a stage called fruit stage. I have a file called generator.py. We can reference that file, or this could be a py file. This could be a zip file. This code, the logic in there will be accessible for us within this Python worksheet experience. So this is a super slick, easy to use, clean, modern experience in true Snowflake fashion. And that's why I just cannot say enough of this. Now, there are people who love Visual Studio Code, PyCharm, and that experience. Obviously, you can still use that. It doesn't mean you don't get to use those experiences. But if you want a quick way to just auto code and you don't want to have the thick client sitting somewhere, again, this is a low friction way for you to get started. Now, when we have code written like this in Python, obviously it's a trivial example. How do we execute this? There are a couple of differences to be aware of. Number one is, unlike SQL worksheets, you cannot execute line by line. So you can't say, I'm going to select this in a Python worksheet and run just that. Let's move the objects away. You cannot just select that and run just that. In the SQL worksheet, you can. You can literally select one line that has an end with a semicolon and execute just that. Not so with Python worksheet. Obviously, it's a procedural environment, meaning you have to execute the entire file. That's how Python just works. And so in this case, if you run this, it's going to execute every single thing. That's just one thing to be aware of if you're coming brand new to Python worksheets from the SQL worksheets. That's pretty obvious. The second thing is, if we have this code written within this worksheet, it doesn't make sense to wake up every morning and come to this worksheet to hit run just to wait for the code to run, right? What if this was doing some inference or some attribution model that takes incoming customers, scores them on who is going to churn? We want to have this run every single morning. We just cannot schedule a worksheet like this to run every single morning, obviously. So the thing we're going to have to do there is deploy that, right? What Snowpark Worksheet allows us to do is take this code, deploy it, and it's going to wrap that as a stored procedure. And now you can orchestrate the stored procedure with, guess what? Task, right? We know task already exists in Snowflake. Folks already have ways of creating tasks and monitoring tasks and orchestrating those tasks. So you can have a task that just simply calls a stored procedure, and that stored procedure is executing your Python code underneath. And this is how that would work. Obviously, you can go ahead and share this and collaborate. Collaboration is a big thing You don't want to develop in silos. You want to really democratize what you're doing, collaborate with your teammates, share worksheets, have other folks contribute to it. And this allows you to share that. Let's go ahead and deploy. You can deploy this, give it a name, call it demo one, just for the sake of it, put in some comments, replace if you want, and you can deploy this, or you can go ahead and open the worksheets. Let's just open it in the worksheets and you can see the actual code that is getting executed, right? So we're going to have a new start procedure here called demo one. This is a Python start procedure. That's the language. These are the dependencies that we've brought in, regex, and also the Snowflake, Snowpark Python. And then obviously this is the code, right? This is a start procedure that you can then trigger and run every day if you wanted to. But guess what? This is not a SQL start procedure. This is a Python start procedure. How amazing is that? Where you have the SQL folks and the Python folks all sitting and collaborating. You're calling a start procedure. You might not even know if it's SQL or Python. It just works. That's the beauty about it. Where in the past, people would have a separate environment for Python and a separate environment for SQL. And then they would have to shuffle and copy data all over. That's the thing of the past, right? This allows you in one environment, write in Python, ship it over. The folks that are doing SQL or the admins are orchestrating it, and there is no friction. There is transparency, and it just works. That's why this is such a game changer. Now, if we execute this, it's going to create a start procedure for us called SP1. If we have the SP1, we can call it like any other start procedure. I think we already know how to call start procedure on Snowflake, right? So it's simple, call SP1, and it would be just that simple to call the start procedure. Voila, that was successful. The start procedure was created. And if we go ahead and execute this, because we're returning a data frame, looking at the information schema, this code has a table for packages on the information schema and filter for packages that have the name in Python. These are all the Python packages that are available here. This is what this code is doing. SQL and Python right all together. It couldn't get that more amazing than this. Let's go back. It's very intuitive to do this. If you want to play around, you can certainly follow this example, but you can get even more sophisticated than that. The next example we're going to see here builds on this generating sample data using a Faker library with Snowpark by Maher. Amazing, amazing. You can copy the code and execute it. What we're doing is we've taken that code and we brought it in Snowpark. Snowpark, obviously standard. And then the rest of the code is just basically the same. So the session, it takes the name of a table, the number of records you want to generate. The gist of this is you tell the table name and how many records you want, and it uses the Faker library. Think about it like a synthetic fake data generator, and it generates kind of real looking data for you. It's pretty cool, to be honest. The use cases for this are bounds. Create a test environment, doing testing. You don't want your production customer data, but you want to generate synthetic data. There are many uses for this. Here, we're getting the Faker. And if we're going to use a Faker, you want to go to packages, obviously, and then reference Faker. We saw that, make sure that's selected and available within this context. We've done that. Here, this is the main piece of this code. It's going to generate these fields and number of records. And once it generates that, format that and write that into the table, which will be the table name provided. So pretty intuitive. At the end, we're going to just return success. Success is a string. So if this is a string we're returning, we don't want to specify table here. Otherwise, we'll run into issues. So let's specify a string here. So we return success. Again, this is something that with the Python worksheet, you can do, right? You can define a function, have an entry point, and then have your code implemented behind that. How would you deploy this? Obviously, we've seen how to deploy this. You can run this if you want to, but I want this code to run on demand. I want it so that, you know, if I'm doing something else, I just call it start procedure, give it a table name, give it the number of records I want, and voila, I get those records put into a table. Go ahead and deploy this. Call this SP customers, give it a description, open that up into the different sheet. If we run this, it's going to create the start procedure. And the way we're going to interact with this start procedure is once that's successful, we know how to do call start procedure. What does it need? It needs a table name. So let's call this customers. We want 1,000 customer records. Execute this. We should have a table called fake customers with 1,000 records. Select star from there. See those records generated. It's that easy. It's that easy. 1,000 fake looking customers that look real. There's a format is there. This looks like a social security format for those in the US. address looks real, names looks real, but this obviously is all synthetic. We've generated this. Now, if we want 1 billion of these records generated, you can get to a bigger warehouse and get those results. That's why this is so amazing. That's why this is so cool. Now, let's copy this, bring that to a different sheet. All right. It would be misleading if we think all we can do is just have a Python worksheet with one function and we have the main, the handler that gets in there and that's it. No, 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 no. It's way, way cooler than that. So let's look at the next example here, which takes exactly the same. But what we've done is we've split it out because I'm not a fan of having a method that does everything. It's always recommended put things into functions that are very atomic. They do specific work. That way debugging and development becomes a lot easier. Let's go back. Instead of generating everything in here, we want to bring that into its own function so we can always change it. So we can come in, now have a new function here called genRows. It takes an input. It's going to do the generation for us and it sends the results back and we do the remainder of the processing. So there's a lot more that you can do, right? If you want to access a stage and import a file and have different methods for processing that file, you can do all of that just right here within the Snowflake experience with Python. Not much different here. The only thing that we're going to do, obviously, is make sure that we have Faker available and the entry point here is main. Just to give you an idea that this entry point doesn't really make a difference. So let's call this DemoHub. And the only thing we're going to have to change here is DemoHub. So if you're going to change the entry point, just make sure it matches whatever it is you specify. And then this entry point now will call the generator role. So that's all we need to do. We can go ahead and deploy this, call this SP customers 2. Everything is the same as before. So it's going to create the stored procedure. All of the code is the same. And to be honest, you can author from here. If you really wanted to, nothing stops you from just creating a stored procedure and writing Python and then putting your code. But you don't have the syntax highlighting. You don't have the IntelliSense, the auto formatting, the documentation, because it's all embedded in here. So the idea of authoring within the Python worksheets and the SQL stored proc is just a wrapper to give you a way to orchestrate that code by calling the stored procedure every day or so. This is not really where you're going to be authoring your code. Think about the stored proc as I've developed, I'm done, and I'm ready to operationalize this. I put in the stored proc and then I send it over to the team that can put that into a task or the workflow that calls that every morning. And that's just how you think about it. Let's go ahead and run this. When this runs, it's going to be very similar to what we did before because it's just a stored procedure. And it's going to find handler with stored procedure called DemoHub. Oh, okay. So let's do this. Okay, sensitive, I guess. And let's do create or replace in case we did that before. So we're going to create or replace that. Just do it one more time. And these are things that you have to watch out for. And I actually love this because there is good messages so you can really develop and debug as you go. So now with this, that was successful. The stored procedure was successful. So we call it SP customer 2. We didn't call it 1. And we want to generate fake customer. The table is 2. Oh, no, we don't want 1,000,000 records. That would not. For the small warehouse I'm using, that will not work. But the beauty is you can always go to a bigger warehouse. So let's go here. And so customers, fake customers 2. Let's go ahead and call that stored procedure. Generate 1,000 records like before. But in this case, it's not all in one line. We'll split things out a little bit and we can double check that. And then again, fake looking records that you can use for analytics, you can use for development without exposing your sensitive data out to the wild. And this allows you to do that in a very easy way. All right. So pretty cool. Now let's go back to the actual code. So this is the second piece we've seen. Now let's go over to the third piece because you might be saying, but Fro, we don't always have all of our code written in this UI. We've already written a lot of code. Can I bring that? And obviously, it wouldn't make sense to take that code and put that into Anaconda just so you can have that available in here. But guess what? Snowflake allows you to still do that. And this is where the third option comes in, again, using the same code. What we're going to do is obviously we're going to bring in Faker. The piece that we really care about is this code that we've written. And this is a Python file sitting on my desktop. In here, we've taken out the generator, the piece that does the generator, the genRows. We've put that into a separate Python file, which is sitting on my desktop. But how do we reference this within the Python code in Snowflake? So if you can do it with this, you can do it with any Python code, right? This could even be code sitting on your or GitHub repo, and you can just simply put that into a stage and reference that with a GitHub action. There are a lot of examples on that. So what you're going to do if you're using the Visual Studio Code extension, again, if you're not using it, oh, you want to use this extension. It's pretty cool. So here you're going to come into the stage. You can use this extension and just do an upload of your local file, which is sitting here into that stage. But guess what? I did it already. That file is sitting on this stage. Trust me, it's sitting on that stage. It's called generator.py. And if you come in here, you have the file name is generator.py. So if we go back and where were we with this? If I list the stage, you can see there is a file here called generator.py, which we've imported. So this is actual Python code sitting on the stage. This could be a zip file. This could be a complex package that you've built over the years sitting there. Or you could just go to PyPy and download some Python file or some package there, bring that in, put it in here. All right. So how are we going to make that available for us? We're going to go back and like we saw before, go to stage. All you have to do, let me delete this. You just specify throw stage. So the name of your stage. All right. And then what do we want? We want a file called generator.py, right? And that's it. We have that file. It's right there. That package is available for us. And that is it. Now, one thing that we have to be cognizant about is if all we do is just reference that, is good. But with Python, even if you reference a file and bring it within the context of your session, you still have to import that, right? And that's the reason why, even though we've added the package called, we still have to do import faker. Obviously, I think this is kind of 101. So in here, we're going to have to do import. And what did we call that? Generator, right? Because if we don't do that, just watch. If we don't do that, guess what? This shows up here. If I go to the existing code, here we're doing general counts, and we just simply, it just works. It resolves because this is all within the same file. So it just resolves. But if we go here, and now I'm saying generator dot, because I know the file name is generator.py. So I want to go in there and reference the general method. It's not resolving, it's complaining. So it's telling us here, generator is not defined, but we've added it in here. So what we have to do is import, and what is the name of the file? Generator. And if we do that, you see this results. And that's really all you have to do, right? And this is just a simple Python file. It's kind of trivial, but if you had a zip file that had lots of things in there, it works essentially the same, right? There's nothing that's too complicated. So you can bring in any file that you want. You can access files from stages. There are just a lot of things that you can do, and we can touch on that in other follow-up videos. Let me know in the comment section below if those are topics we should touch on, and I can definitely look at doing that. So now we have that. And like before, the beauty of this is now we don't have that code implemented here anymore. We're simply going to generator and generating that. That's coming from a file, which is sitting on the stage in Snowflake securely. Go ahead and deploy this. And we're going to call this SP customers. Let's call this customers 3, give it a comment. So we have our packages, then we have our imports. What is the difference? Packages is what comes from Anaconda, right? So this is what you get from Anaconda. Import is what you bring in, and you can add as many imports as you want. You can do this. It's totally fine, right? You can add as many as you want. And then these are the ones that you get, obviously, from Anaconda just being referenced. And then here, again, everything is the same. This should work. Let's go ahead and execute this. While that's executing, let's do 1,000 again. And if we go ahead and execute that with any luck, we should have that created, and let's select the table. Now we have, voila, we have the fake looking data within that table. The format looks good, but it's all fake, right? We're not exposing our social security. We're not exposing our sensitive customer data, but folks can develop around this and then eventually push that to production. Hopefully this was helpful. We've touched a lot. Hope you are as excited about Snowpark for Python as I am, but more importantly, the Python worksheets, because this is a whole new experience. You can imagine literally on my phone, I could connect to a browser. As long as I have a browser, I can develop. I don't need to install Visual Studio Code, PyCharm, and Jupyter Notebooks and all of that. Obviously, if you need that for your use case, your workflow, for more advanced stuff, you've got it, right? You can use it. The beauty of Snowflake is it meets you where you are. It really gives you a frictionless way of doing it, or you can always use your own custom way of doing it if that's what you prefer. Just to recap, let's bring this back home. You come in, you can author new worksheets. You have the existing SQL worksheets. It doesn't go away. If you want the Python worksheets, you can always have access to that. Once you create a Python worksheet, you can create simple functions and write any arbitrary amount of code you want in here. The sky really is the limit. If there are settings, make sure your settings are all there. Make sure your packages are all referenced. If you have custom packages, also reference those. Now, this preview might go away because based on the time I'm making this, it's still a preview feature. But essentially what that means is sooner or later it's going to be generally available and everybody can use that. That's one way of doing it. Now, obviously, once you start thinking about programming, OOP, modularity, encapsulation, all those things, apply those best practices, break things out into different functions, and you can reference functions. There's really no limit. This is a true IDE in the browser, which you can use. We took out the main piece of it, we split it out, and everything still works. And then we went to the third part, which is now instead of us having all the code already within this worksheet, is we have existing code, we bring that into a stage, just do a put command into a stage, and you can use the Visual Studio Code extension, use the upload functionality, upload any files you want, any existing code you want. You want to do the PY files, you want to do the Python files, you can zip it if you want, to be honest. If you have it in a directory, you can just zip that directory and put it up, that's fine. But you don't want to do a wheel file, that's not supported. So do either the regular Python file, PY file, or a zip file, at least at the time of making this video. Maybe that would change, but at the time of making this video, you want the direct Python file and you can access the methods within that. Once we've done that, we have it in the stage. You can double check that that file is in the stage, just a regular Python file. I have tons and tons of them. And then you can reference that. So just do an import of the file, and then you can go within that and access the methods just like before. And you don't have to rewrite code. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can build on the existing tribal knowledge your team has and just really focus on adding new value and new development. So there you have it, just to bring this home. Python Worksheets in Snowflake available. It's an amazing feature. Again, I hope you all are as excited as I am about this feature. We've just scratched the surface here. If there are any questions, comments, things you want me to jump in to unpack, how to access files, how to access stages from within this, go into the comment section below, let me know, and we'll see what we can do. This has been Fru. I'm your host with DemoHub. Today, we've talked about Python Worksheets on Snowflake that allows you to interact with Snowpark for doing machine learning, data science, data engineering, or anything data on the platform. Again, as always, like this, share this with somebody that might get value out of it, and I'll see you in the next demo.